Hey guys, welcome back. In this video, we are talking about silver going to $100, the breakout times, the margin calls happening, and many more in this video. Now, firstly, we have to understand is that currently in the Asia market, everyone is still extremely bullish on silver. We can see that silver actually opened today at $102.5 in China. Now, when we take a look at COMEX, what we are looking at is 88.29, but what we have seen recently is how we are following behind the Chinese market, how the premium, how that price actually acts as a leading indicator. So the fact that we are seeing it open at 102, we know that it's bullish, but it doesn't stop there, because if you take a look at this right now, firstly, the benchmark price in the Shanghai Gold Exchange is without that 100.9 USD per troy ounce. Then when you do include the VAT, what we're coming at is 114 USD per troy ounce. So once again, what we're talking about and what we are looking at is effectively how ahead Asia is, and just like we've said, is acting as a leading indicator. We are going to be seeing that price following it very, very soon. The reason for this is because the demand is still there, because of the fact that they can't manipulate this for long. The physical demand for silver is still there in China. You can see real metal doesn't lie, paper silver does. The physical in silver in China without and with tax, you obviously come in at this price. And then when you get the paper silver, you are at 90.5. So the numbers don't lie. What we have right now is currently multiple big institutions who are worried that they are going to go bankrupt, who are worried that they are going to get squeezed, who are desperately trying to prevent the price from going up. I'll be showing you guys multiple data later on as well to prove this, but this is what we are seeing. You just have to understand it's only a matter of time before everything catches up with what's actually going on. You can even see for the technical analysis what we are looking at for silver, $100 possibly coming soon, whether it's today or Monday. Now, what we are seeing for today in terms of the technical analysis is essentially accumulation. We're seeing how the shorts are trying to bring the silver price down again. Now, bear in mind is that multiple short sellers are already underwater, but they're trying to prevent the massive losses. So right now they're desperately trying to bring the price down, but you can see what it's seemingly looking like as a lot of people are willing to be buying silver at this $87, $86 area. And so that's what they're failing to bring it down against. These short sellers want it below these levels. However, the buyers of silver are extremely bullish. And just like what we've talked about with the physical demand, is that ultimately people are willing to buy silver even when it goes to 92, even when it goes to 95, all the way up to 100. And so the very fact we are looking at this area, I am not worried about people not willing to accumulate, because the demand is there for silver. Previously, and bear in mind that this is old news, you can see for the 15th of January, what we saw was in the Shanghai Exchange, what we saw was silver closing at 99.69, how the Shanghai silver premium widens to $13. And what we are looking at is just, once again, the proof of how it's a leading indicator of how we can see the Shanghai market and then use it on what we are looking at here as well in terms of what we can see for our futures. And so just like what we've said earlier with the very start in terms of how silver is opening, what the demand is like, what the price is like, you can see how it's coming to relevancy here. You can see why multiple people are extremely optimistic, why the bullish momentum and the sentiment is still there for silver. And then if you can see, in the case it wasn't clear, banksters are desperately trying to hold SLV below $80 to limit their losses as much as possible and fight the ongoing gamma squeeze. Small problem is that these paper games have to fight against physical reality. So if you want to take a look at here, this is just showing who's going to be affected. Are the short sellers panicking? And indeed, that's what we are looking at. But just like Just Dario has said, is that they have a fight against the physical reality. For those of you who are extremely into silver, who are, in real life are potentially buying silver yourself, you can feel free to ask around and see what the demand is like. And I will know is that the demand is still there. People on the internet may be saying other things, but in real life, wherever you're in Asian market or even in the US market, people are buying silver up right now. And so that's something that can't be obviously fabricated. That is something that we are seeing, and that's something we have to understand. And then you can see pretty obvious what's going on in silver. These people are putting themselves at serious risk of being steamrolled on their short. So just like we've said here, every time we see a bounce back to 87, it's because of how these silvers shorts don't want to get bankrupted. They don't want to get liquidated. So they are obviously trying to bring the price down. But you can see multiple times, and this isn't just, one instances, multiple occasions where we're seeing silver take off and it goes back to 87, people are willing to accumulate. So whether it's on paper, whether it's physical, the demand is still there. It's just that on paper, they're trying to obviously fabricate some sort of data to make people think that there is no demand and that the price of silver is going down. You have to realize price discovery for silver should have been gradual over decades. Naked shorting and market manipulation are catching up to the crooks who suppress the true value. This will be a multi-year run. So what we are looking at is just how the real price of silver is still yet to be seen. What we are looking at right now is momentum is still accumulating, because we have to understand, if it weren't for the fact that there are massive banks, massive institutions out there who can easily get bankrupted by the shorts that they have put up, we would have been seeing silver actually going up even higher. But it's because they have to protect themselves. It's because regulations want to protect these guys who are holding on to hundreds of billions of dollars of shorts, that we are not seeing silver really having the true price discovery that it should have. Furthermore, you can see from more data in terms of what's going on in terms of the price manipulation. You can see about the futures contract traded at COMEX yesterday, the total open interest, and what we are looking at is how it's lower. Now, if this does not scream insane price manipulation, considering what happened to silver price on Thursday, I don't know what else is needed. But what we can see is, firstly, we've seen with the data, we've seen with the technical analysis, we know for a fact that there are multiple institutions who are underwater. There are multiple banks who are worried, hence why we're seeing this manipulation. But ultimately, we know where the price of silver is going to go. We can see from the chart what is actually going on. Now, many of you may have seen this where US Mint reportedly cancelling silver orders. So yesterday, it was the fact that US Mint had halted silver sales in the face of unprecedented silver demand. Tonight, reports are claiming that US Mint has begun cancelling the silver orders placed Tuesday prior to the Mint halting sales. So this is literally them seeing how much demand there is and how they're trying to prevent the price from actually lifting off and just going to the moon. But from here, what we can understand ultimately is the demand that is there. It's exactly what's going on. It's what we've said. Everything about how silver is going up is actually there. But more than that is that whilst we have this suppression, whilst we have everything that's going on, the paper slams are getting weaker. Every dip is getting bought physically by big money. And just like what we talked about, you can see the accumulations coming in at 87. You can see the accumulation coming in at 86. There are multiple areas where there are accumulations coming on. I'm just giving you guys one particular set of area. If you want to be, even strict, you can see there's still people constantly buying in around at the $90. These psychological levels. It's just that right now, if we're taking it at from a longer perspective, from a longer time frame, they're buying in at that 87. And this is done both from physically and of course what we talked about with the futures as well. But you realize what is actually going on. So this is why we've said that these banks, they are losing the war. They are failing to prevent, not only suppress the price down to the price they want it to be, but to even push people away from buying into silver. They're failing on both those aspects. And then if you see that the fact they weren't already worried, you can see the fact they're announcing 10,000 minimum due to historic silver volumes. So they essentially is trying to keep retail out, where they have instituted a 10K minimum to help keep volume down and improve service levels. So essentially they are increasing the barrier to entry, they're increasing the difficulty. and ultimately to keep the volume down. But why would they keep the volume down? In a market where we've known that there are demand, which is ultimately going to lead the volume up, why are they trying to keep it down? Why are they trying to keep the demand down, which is aiding to typically the price going up? And you can see and understand it's because they don't want the price to go up, is what we are looking at. But you know that they can't suppress this for long, because when you understand everything that's going on, when you understand that globally everyone is in need of silver right now, everyone is willing to be buying into silver, you see how powerful this gets. And another reason for why we're seeing the price go down and push lower despite no significant volume traders so far, the answer is one word: spoofing. So if for those of you who are not new to my channel, you will know what spoofing is. For those of you who are new on this and you're essentially understanding in terms of the tactics that these banks use, they use it for multiple different securities. They've used it for stocks, they're using it for futures, and this is what we are looking at, talking about the naked shorts, talking about the spoofing. And that's exactly what's happening here, is why you will see that on very, very low volume, the price is still drastically dropping. And so you have to realize is that it's not tariff talk pushing paper silver prices down, it's market manipulation. And so this is what we have to realize, is that it won't admit the shorts are slamming the price down because they're worried about margin calls. But so far, real demand has sent the price back up after. And so it's why I said we are not worried about where we are at in terms of the current price. We haven't reached 95, but is that worrying when we see it hit 87? No, because the reason why we haven't seen it go to 95 is because of all the obstacles that have been put here by these institutions. The reason why it's gone to 87 is because of all what we talked about, the spoofing, the naked shorting, essentially trying to prevent these margin calls happening. However, we know that ultimately it will go to 95, it will go to 100 because the physical demand is there, because we've already seen it happen in the Asian market, and that's what we have to realize. And you can even see this is just an example of short sellers failing, where TD Security closes their silver short in model portfolio update. So previously what we talked about was how they took another swing at shorting silver, where they're looking for a drop to $40 in the next 3 months. And this was what TDS was talking about. But then you can see how it was short-lived, how they were already closing out this position because they were already losing money, along with all of these other massive institutions and banks as well. But you can see the effect that we are having, is why we've said, yes, they can bring it down for the short term. Maybe they brought it down today. You know, we're starting off lower than where we opened, but when the physical demand is there, when everyone is willing to be buying silver, despite the fact it's being suppressed, we know that it's going to go higher. We know that come Monday, the price is only going to get higher and higher. And so that's what we have to realize. And then you have to be able to be comfortable with the volatility. Keep reminding yourself that there is not enough silver. We don't know at what price the market will find balance, but we can be sure it's a higher price. So just like we talked about, we know that the demand is there. For those of you with basic understandings of supply and demand, you will know that until we find that equilibrium, we won't know the price. But currently, with the demand being at its high, we know that it is not yet hitting that equilibrium. So it's why we have to be used to volatility, but it's also why we know that the price is still yet to go even higher. And if you want to not only be exposed to, of course, just the silver futures or the SLV, you can see Eric Sprott, who actually increases his Highcroft Mining Corp position. And what we are looking at here, where he filed more, he bought 200,000 shares coming in at around $33.21. And this is just showing the confidence that is still there. It's showing about how people still believe that even at its current point, where some people like institutions, some banks are saying that silver is overvalued, that it's going down, the mass consensus is that people are still extremely bullish, that people are still willing to be buying stocks even at this current price, where some may deem it as very risky, but others see it as a great opportunity. And then when you take a look at all the calls expiring in the money, you start to see what's going on. It's why they're obviously trying to prevent SLV from going up. It's because they understand that if these options are exercised, they will be in an extremely bad position. Now, as always, this is financial advice. Do take with a grain of salt. Make sure you do your own due diligence and research, and I'll catch you guys next time.